Welcome to the Jonas Educational video on tea time lotteries. This will give you just the basics of how to process a tea time lottery. There is a separate video on setting up the tea time lottery system. So the first thing we'll look at is having people register for the lottery date. So we'll go to tea time management and we go to processing, or you can be accessing it through point of sale tea time. Doesn't really matter which way. So my lottery is set up for Friday, and basically if I click tea time requests, this is who's already entered in for the lottery, and I can basically add a new request or a group if I'm going to allow groups to register for a lottery day. So we'll do an individual request. So it should default the date for you. The request number, you just press enter. Jonas will generate a unique number each time. And basically, what time does this person want their tea time for? So in a perfect world, this person would like it for 1 o'clock. But if there's a conflict, he'd be willing to accept anything from 11 a.m. through to end of day 5 p.m. And then which course. If you have multiple courses, you can select which course they're putting in to join. So then how many players? Is it going to be 2 people, 3 people, 4 people? I'm going to say it's 2. At this point, this screen is basically the same as a regular tea time. So if I have the member number, I can plug it in. Or if I'm looking them up by name, I can put in the first 3 letters and click the lookup and get it that way. It'll pull in that member's information. And if it's a guest, just like the regular tea time, I can either pull from the guest database, or I can fill in the pertinent information and they'll get added to the database, or I can leave it blank. As long as I have at least 1 member in there, that's fine. So I'm going to hit confirm tea times. Now in my case, I'm getting this message because I've got a cutoff point at which I will no longer take entries for the lottery. And that varies from club to club. In my case, it's 1 day in advance, so it's saying that it's technically past the deadline. But I'm just going to say yes. So there's everyone that I've got in. If someone wants to make a change, for instance, this one, I can just double click on it and it'll bring up that entry. And I can change times, I can change the number of players, I can change the member link, whatever I like. Now if we go into this weighting is basically based on whether or not you've set up your lottery to be to pay attention to weighting. So if you're doing weighting, it's basically the idea is that depending on whether or not this member got his tea time last time, he might get a higher weighting, so he's more likely to get closer to his time the next lottery. It all depends on your configuration. Some clubs that are using the lottery, there is no weighting. So it's basically a random lottery every single time it's run. So you take your chances each time, names in a hat, we pull them out. So straightforward. Now, when you're taking that request or entering them into the lottery, one of the things you have here is waiting lists. Now, by default, the system will push them onto a wait list if they don't get picked at all. So if I have 6 people booked for 9 and they'll only accept 9 o'clock, so I set my parameters from 9 to 9, then obviously if they don't get picked, then it's going to push to the wait list in case someone cancels. Usually you don't touch that. That's preset in the confirmation. Okay. So once I'm ready to actually run the lottery, and it's up to you when you run it, could be the morning of, could be the previous day, could be a week out. It's all really up to you folks. So to run the lottery, you're going to go to Tea Time Management, Processing, tea time request lottery. So first thing it'll ask you is what date are you running it for? So I want it for the 10th. And then what are you doing? If it's a straight random draw, so you're not using the weighting, then you can basically just pick random draw. Okay? If you're using weighting, then you want weighted draw. Sort and draw weighted and random. It's just a different way of it processing the random draw. Most commonly, clubs are going to use one or two. Weighted if they've got weighting built into their lottery system. Random if it's completely random, names out of a hat type of thing. Now, normally you would want this to show up, and I'll show you why when we get to the next step. We always want at least this flag on. These three flags have to do with the variance, and you'll see that in the next screen. It basically will show you what the variance is from what they requested to what they actually ended up. And it's just to help you in visualizing what's happened with that member's request. Okay. So I could run the lottery for just the morning. Most commonly, if I'm running a lottery, it's going to be for the whole day. Now, in my case, I only want to run it for one course. But, I mean, if you have multiple courses, you don't have to do it one at a time. You could run it for all the courses in one go. Same with the golfer classification. If I want to run it for just specifics, I could pick that. Again, for most of our clients with lottery, that isn't going to happen. It's basically everyone who's on the list, we're going to run them within the lottery. So then I'm going to click Begin Lottery Processing. Now, in this case, it's going to come up and tell me that about the wait list, and that once you run this, it's going to create the lottery. You're still not, you can still back out of it. Even if you click yes here, there's still an option to say, no, abandon this pick. I want to make some changes and run it again. So at this point, you should always view. Don't PDF, Smart Viewer, print, or file. Always view first. So what it does is it goes through and creates the lottery. So this is the results of the lottery, and this is your variance. So basically, these three people all wanted 9 o'clock. So they won the 9 o'clock slot. These guys ended up being 10 minutes before, and these guys ended up 10 minutes after. So that just is the variance flag we were talking about. Now, for a lot of clients, if they're going to manipulate the lottery, which some do, some don't. It's completely random, and whatever it comes out with, that's what you're going to get. But obviously, you're dealing with members. There may be some preference to override the system manually, and you can do that from here. Most commonly, clients, if they're going to override the lottery results, will use this tab instead, because this actually shows you the T sheet, which is just an easier way of visualizing what's happened. So Mr. McQuarrie didn't get the 9 o'clock, he got the 8:50, and Mr. Abbott won the 9 o'clock slot. Say for the sake of argument, I don't like that. I actually want to give Mr. McQuarrie a preference and give him the 9 o'clock, and Russ, I'll move back to the 8:50. So what you can do is click these to remove them. Now it doesn't remove them from the lottery. It basically what it does is it drops them down below here to say they have not been allocated a spot. So now I want to put Patty in for the 9 o'clock slot. All I do is down below, I right click and click Cut Request. And then I click the 9 o'clock spot, right click and paste. And then now I can do the same thing for Russ. I can right click, cut, and paste them in. So now I've manually overridden it for my own preferences. So at this point, as I said, you can still abandon the whole thing and get back out, which means nothing will happen. It'll just revert everyone back into the pool for the next time you run this. I can hit continue, which will basically now commit these to the T sheet. If you're set up for it, it'll email the players to let them know they've won their spot and the times that they've been allocated. Reset will undo those changes I made and basically reset it back to what it was. So I'm going to do continue and yes. So it's just going to spit out a report for me saying, okay, well, here's the results. Okay. And then last step, we give you one last chance to abandon the final, and I'm going to say yes. And now it's going to update the tea sheet. So now when we go into tea time, for the 10th, we now see the people in their appropriate spots. This is now, tea sheet's now been open, so obviously spots that weren't allocated for the lottery are open for regular walk-in tea times. And at this point, I could move these if I needed to make changes to it. And that's it. Tea time lottery is done.